Have you ever wondered why the very people who once left you with pride suddenly come back one day wearing the same smile, the same familiar tone, and eyes that almost seem regretful? No, they don't return because of love. They return because of loss. Not the loss of you, but the loss of the version of themselves that once came alive in your light. When a narcissist walks away, they truly believe they're upgrading. Yet, in the glittering illusion of their new relationship, they slowly realize no one can provide the same energy you once gave, the understanding, the care, even the pain they used to feed on to feel powerful. They leave chasing admiration, but they come back because they can't bear the emptiness they created within themselves. And that is the true tragedy of the narcissist. They don't miss you out of love. They miss you because you were the mirror that made them feel like they mattered. But when you stay silent, when you've risen from the very wounds they left behind, they finally see that what they lost was not just a person, but the only source of power they ever knew how to exploit. Today, we'll dive deep into the truth they never dare to face. The real reason narcissists abandon their new supply and crawl back to find you not out of remorse, but because you are the mirror that reflects the void within their soul. When a narcissist leaves you, they're not searching for love. They're searching for a new mirror, someone who can reflect back the illusion that they're still important, special, and admirable. But you know what happens next? They discover that no one mirrors them the way you once did. No one else can see their cracks and still choose to love them. No one else can endure, forgive, and give as much as you did. You used to be their emotional charging station. Every compliment, every tear, every desperate attempt to prove your love, all of it fed the empty ego within them. When they left, they believed that finding a new supply would fix everything. But what they didn't understand is that you weren't just a person. You were an experience, one they could never recreate with anyone else. Time pass. The glow of the new relationship begins to fade. The novelty wears off. Sweet words can no longer mask the emptiness, devouring them from the inside. And at night, in the silence they once mistook for freedom, they begin to feel their greatest fear. No one left to control. No one left to blame. No one left to reflect their existence. So they return, not because they've changed, not because they finally see your worth, but because they're desperate to feel the same old power again. When they text, call, or accidentally show up, understand this: they're not looking for you, they're looking for your former self. The version that easily forgave, the version that believed love could heal everything, the version that thought one day they would finally change. But now, you're different. You've walked through the storm and stood up on your own. You've learned that love cannot save someone who doesn't want to be saved. You've mastered the art of silence, not because you're weak, but because you no longer need to prove anything. And that silence is your loudest voice. Because to a narcissist, your silence isn't just a loss, it's a punishment they cannot control. They once believed they were the center of your universe, but now you've stepped out of their orbit. And when they're no longer the center of your life, they face the most painful truth. All their power only ever existed because you allowed it. When a narcissist leaves, they never truly leave. They merely switch stages. They withdraw from your life like an actor changing scenes, not because the play is over, but because they need a new audience for the same old script. In that new place, they start the same familiar performance. Sweet words, fake sincerity, tragic stories that make them sound like the most wounded soul alive. And the new person, full of hope, craving love unknowingly, steps into the same trap you once escaped. They think they're upgrading. They believe the new relationship will bring them happiness, that they'll finally be adored like a savior. But as with every play, the spotlight eventually dims. When the novelty fades, when the partner starts seeing the contradictions, the demands, the coldness hidden behind the charm, everything collapses again. Narcissists don't know how to sustain love because they've never known how to love. They only know how to possess. To them, love isn't about sharing, it's a game of control. When the new person starts showing real emotions, when they stop constantly admiring and submitting, the narcissist grows bored. Because to them, you were never a person. You were a reflection. You existed to make them feel valuable. Once you stop serving that purpose, they immediately go searching for another mirror. But here's the truth they always deny. Not every mirror shows the beautiful image they want to see. The new person might not be patient enough, empathetic enough, or emotionally rich enough to feed that starving ego. And then, in the long nights, when no one praises them, when the spotlight has gone dark, they begin to think of you. Not because they love you, but because in their mind you remain the only place they could draw energy without paying the price. They remember your eyes, the gentleness when they were weak. They remember your worry, your forgiveness, your waiting. Not because they appreciate you, but because they crave the old power, the power to make someone confused, hurting, and begging for affection. That feeling, the feeling of being needed, is the only thing that ever made them feel alive. And so they come back. But not as someone grateful. They return like a familiar guest knocking on an old door, carrying the same voice that once melted your resolve. They speak of missing you, of memories of what if, of no. But if you look deeply into their eyes, you'll see there's no remorse. Only emptiness, desperately seeking to be filled again. When they come back, they aren't looking for you. They're looking for the weaker version of you. The one who believed love could heal every wound. The one who thought that if you were good enough, patient enough, gentle enough, one day they would see your worth. But the truth is, narcissists never realize. They only remember when there's no one left to control. You see, they're not afraid of losing you. They're afraid that you no longer need them. Because when you're silent, when you don't react, when their old tricks no longer work, they panic. They lose direction. Because their power never came from presence, but from their ability to control emotions. When you withdraw that energy, they collapse quietly, completely. They'll try everything to provoke emotion in you. Sometimes sweetness, sometimes rage, sometimes weakness. They might say they've changed, that they're in therapy, that they finally understand everything. But look closely, if that awakening only appears after they've lost control over you, it's not enlightenment, it's manipulation. A truly changed person doesn't come back to prove it. They come back to take responsibility. But a narcissist doesn't take responsibility. They only reopen old wounds to see if you'll still bleed for them. And if you do, they win because to them, love was never connection. It was proof of power. But this time, you're no longer the same. You've learned the hardest truth that no one can heal you with the same hands that once wounded you. You understand now that kindness does not mean opening your door to someone who once set your house on fire. You can forgive, but forgiveness does not mean forgetting. Forgiveness is freedom for your soul, not another invitation for someone who once destroyed your peace. There will come a moment when they try to play the wounded one. They'll tell stories about lonely nights, about how no one understands them, about the emptiness they cannot fill. They'll say you were the only one who ever truly loved them. And deep down, there's one thing they're right about. You did love them with all your heart, compassion, and faith that love could redeem a broken soul. But what they will never understand is this. Love cannot save someone who refuses to save themselves. Don't let your compassion become the trap they set. Because every time you open the door, they don't walk in to make peace. They walk in to reclaim power. They don't return because they miss you. They return to test how strong you've become. And if you tremble, if you soften, if you just want to hear what they have to say, they will smile quietly because they know the game still works. But this time, you have the right to end it. You have the right not to reply. You have the right to stay silent, not out of anger, but out of clarity. Because deep down, you know, the one who left without looking back will never return to love. They return to harvest. And once you've matured emotionally, you're no longer fertile soil for selfish hands to sow their lies. They may call you cold. They may say you've changed. But the truth is, you haven't changed. You've simply returned to your original nature. Someone who can love, give, and still protect their own soul. You don't need to prove your strength. Your calm non-reaction is proof enough it terrifies them, because they have no idea what to do with someone who can no longer be manipulated through emotion. When you're silent, they feel small. When you're calm, they feel exposed. When you smile without needing them, they realize that all the power they thought they had was nothing but illusion. And when they finally see that you've truly moved on, they'll spiral, desperate to pull you back. But there's no road that leads back to the fire you once escaped. They left to run from the truth. But the truth still waits for them in the mirror every time they look at themselves. And that truth is this: they didn't lose you because you weren't enough. They lost you because they never knew how to love something that good. They can replace people, but they can't replace you, because no one else will ever love them with the same selfless heart you once had. But that no longer matters, because the one you now need to love, understand, and heal is yourself. Let them live with the emptiness they created. That is the only lesson they might ever learn if they're brave enough to face it. As for you, live fully, not to make them regret, but because you deserve the peace they could never give. You don't need revenge. Your calm existence, your genuine smile, and the light you've reclaimed are the clearest proof that they've lost. Not because you defeated them, but because you stopped playing their game. And that is the real reason they come back. Not because they love you, but because they can't stand watching you be happy in a world where they no longer exist. When a narcissist comes back, they don't return to love, they return to check whether your wound has healed and whether you'll reopen it just because they knock. In their world, love doesn't mean connection, it means power. They don't understand loyalty, yet they're obsessed with the feeling of being someone's obsession. That's why they need you not to share joy, but to prove they can still control someone's emotions other than their own. That's why they never truly leave. Even if you block their number or change your path, they find cracks to slip through. A harmless-looking message, a casual hi, a comment on social media, or a mutual friend. Each of these small gestures is a test. They don't need a reply right away, they just want to see that you still react. A second of hesitation, a minute of wondering to them, that's enough proof they still have power. But what they never anticipate is that you've changed far more deeply than they imagined. Because once you've fallen to the bottom of pain, you fear nothing anymore. Once you've seen them for who they truly are, without illusion, without disguise, you can never be enchanted again. You've walked through hell and come back not as a victim, but as a soul reborn. They come back and see your peace. And that terrifies them, because peace is something they cannot create or control. In their eyes, your serenity is betrayal, because in their mind, you were supposed to be broken, waiting, and forever hurting. But instead, you're thriving. You laugh more, you sleep better. And perhaps most painfully for them, you don't talk about them anymore. For a narcissist, that's the ultimate humiliation, to be forgotten. When they realize you no longer think of them, that's when they start thinking of you. Not because you matter, but because without an audience, they don't know who to perform for. They try to find excitement in new relationships, but everything feels dull. No drama, no tears, no one reacting passionately to their games. They start to feel invisible, and that's something a narcissist can never bear. They remember how you used to forgive, cry for them, and try to fix things. They remember how you cared about every word they said, how you made them a priority. And when they look at their new relationship, where they're no longer adored like before, they crave that old feeling like an addict missing their drug. But that craving doesn't come from love, it comes from their inner void. They don't love you. They love the feeling of being loved by you. They don't miss you. They miss the feeling of controlling you. And the cruelest part is this: they don't come back out of remorse. They come back because they can't stand facing their own consequences, loneliness, insecurity, and being forgotten. So when they knock again, understand, behind that smile, behind those seemingly gentle eyes, hides a hunger for power disguised as an apology. They'll say everything you once longed to hear. I was wrong. You're the only one who ever understood me. No one loves me like you do. Oh, but if you truly listen, you'll notice there's no accountability in their words. Only fear, the fear of losing their last source of ego fuel. And when you no longer respond the way you once did, they change tactics. They'll appear fragile, tell pitiful stories, evoke sympathy. They'll try to make you believe they're truly broken, that you are their last hope. But in reality, this is their final emotional trick, a last attempt to strike at your compassion, the softest part of your heart. Don't forget, they once studied that heart. They know how it beats, how it reacts, how it breaks. And now, they're only testing whether that heart has grown strong enough not to tremble at old memories. If you still feel sympathy, that's not wrong, because people with deep empathy always feel deeply. But the difference now is, you no longer confuse compassion with love. You can care, but you are no longer willing to sacrifice yourself to save someone who doesn't want to be saved. When you reach that clarity, you step out of their control forever. Because a narcissist can only manipulate those who still believe they owe them something. Once you realize you owe them nothing, not an explanation, not another chance, not even a memory, they lose their grip entirely. The irony is, they'll never admit that you frighten them. But believe me, deep down, they feel it. Because every time they think of you, they remember the version of themselves that was exposed. You once saw it all. The lies, the weakness, the pretense, and you still loved them. That both disgusts and terrifies them. Because few people have ever seen them so completely and still been kind enough not to judge. But when the one who once loved them with such gentleness turns away and finds peace within themselves, that's when they truly fall apart. Not because they lost you, but because they lost the ability to hurt you. For a narcissist, losing the power to wound you is the ultimate punishment. They may find someone new, post their happiness, pretend they've moved on. But in the silence of night, they still think of you not with love, but with obsession. Obsession with not understanding why you no longer react. Obsession with not understanding why you didn't collapse this time. Obsession with realizing that this time they truly lost you. And when they see you continue to live, to love, to smile without ever mentioning them, they finally know they've lost something that no manipulation can ever buy back. Not a person to control, but a soul that once loved them unconditionally. But you are no longer that person. Now you are the version who has grown, healed, and learned that love should never have to beg. You don't need them to feel worthy. You don't need them to prove you can love. And above all, you don't need them to feel whole. That moment when you stop seeking external validation, when you can be grateful for the past without wanting to return to it, is when they finally understand they've truly lost. Not because you hate them, but because you no longer care. And that is the real reason. They come back to test whether they can still make you care one more time. But what they don't realize is, the battle ended long ago. There is no winner, no loser. There is only you, the one who climbed out of the pit, dried your tears, and now looks back at the past as a lesson. You don't need revenge, because your peace is the answer. You don't need their apology, because you've already forgiven, not for them, but for yourself. And you don't need anyone to validate your journey, because every step you take in the light of self-awareness is proof of your strength. They will still talk, still perform, still try to shake your calm. But you are no longer the audience. You've left the arena, closed the chapter, and stepped into the light. As for them, they remain trapped in the dark room they built themselves, where every relationship is a stage, and every love is a role they play. They don't realize that you are truly free. And that freedom, that unshakable serenity, is what will haunt them forever. In the end, the most terrifying thing for a narcissist is not being abandoned. It's being forced to face someone who has found themselves. Because when you are no longer bound by old illusions, when you can stand before them without fear, when you can look at them and feel no sting in your heart, that is the moment they realize their power over you is gone forever. They may try to recreate the past, but they can never recreate you as you are now. The one who was once soft now understands the value of stillness. The one who once forgave endlessly now knows the boundaries of compassion. The one who once loved unconditionally has learned how to love without self-destruction. You don't need them to admit their wrongs, because your growth is the clearest declaration that they no longer affect you. You've walked through pain not to prove your strength, but to learn how to feel whole without needing anyone else. The truth is, they will remember you. They will think of you sometimes in silence, sometimes with regret. But what they remember is not love. They remember the power they once had, the power to make you cry, to make you wait, to make you believe. And when they see you smiling, living freely, they cannot understand how you did it. They'll twist the story, saying you've changed, that you've become cold. But only you know the truth. You are not cold. You simply no longer need to suffer. You don't need to slam the door in anger. Close it with peace. Because your peace is proof that you've won not over them, but over the pain that once held you captive. And when you walk away silent, calm, unburdened, that is the purest victory. A victory that needs no audience, no witness, yet echoes deeply within your soul. Let them leave with their illusions. As for you, keep living not as a victim, but as one who has awakened. You don't need to be perfect. You only need to be honest with your heart and brave enough to protect it. And if anyone asks you why the narcissist came back, smile and say, they came back not because they loved me, but because they couldn't forget the light of someone who once loved them sincerely. Then turn away, not in pride, but in the quiet strength of someone who understands. When you love yourself, when you choose peace over chaos, freedom over control, you have stepped out of the cycle forever. And that is why they will never be able to touch you again.